Okay, welcome back. And of course, in the headlines, there's a lot what's going on in the Middle East, and I always just really amazed when we call. Ruthie gives us time, and she is Ruthie Blum. She is a former advisor in the office of the Prime Minister there of Benjamin Netanyahu, an award-winning columnist, senior contributing editor to the Jewish News Syndicate, which is JNS, and she's the co-host with what they call the Israel Undiplomatic. They're on JNS TV. So you can go to jns.org is the website. So, Ruthie, good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you too, Perry. And now I'm stateside, as we say. I'm talking to you from New York. I'm visiting.
Okay, good to see you. Well, welcome to a little bit safety.
Sort of, yeah. A different kind of danger. Different kind of danger.
Just amazing. So, just to kind of lay some foundation there, can you explain to our viewers and listeners what is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation?
It's a private organization, from the United States, and it has joined forces, so to speak, with Israel to distribute humanitarian aid to the civilians of Gaza and circumvent Hamas, the terrorist organization there that was both commandeering the aid that was provided by the United Nations, stealing it and selling it at exorbitant prices to the population. And so it was really terrible because this way Hamas had total political control, not just military, of Gaza. And so the food distribution had to be taken away from Hamas, and now it is.
Okay, now we had this bus attack. 5 were killed. This couldn't happen at a more anxious time. How significant is this attack?
Very significant. And I'll tell you, one of the main reasons it's significant is that they fear, the foundation fears that some people there not only were killed and wounded, but were taken hostage. And you see, we still have Israeli hostages in Gaza, and that's been making the war, making Israel very careful about how it prosecutes the war. And to have more hostages there is just a disaster.
How come, Ruthie, Hamas is able to manage and push a false narrative of the humanitarian aid going into Gaza? How have they been able to get away with that one?
Oh, because of their fellow travelers in the progressive left, and also among even liberals who aren't that progressive. For some reason, liberals around the world, especially in Europe, but also in the United States, side with the devil by somehow taking the word of a terrorist organization over the word of Israel, a democracy that has free speech and free elections and cares about human life. And progressives always take the wrong side in any debate and in any conflict.
Okay. It's no secret that when humanitarian aid is sent into Gaza, it gets hijacked by Hamas. It's no secret. For the most part, the world knows about it. But somehow the left continues to champion that that's not happening. It would seem to me that it's obvious what is happening, and you're a little bit closer to it. Is there any other way we can get aid to the Palestinians other than putting it in there and let the Hamas just hijack it?
Okay, so first of all, when the UN was responsible for distributing humanitarian aid, you see, the United Nations is in cahoots with Hamas. Do you know how many United Nations workers are employed by Hamas? So that is why the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was created, to take it out of the hands of the UN and Hamas. And it has been working, other than up until that moment when workers there were killed by Hamas. But basically it was working. much food was distributed. Hamas was unable to get its hands on it. And that's because the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF was safeguarding it, helping. It wasn't that the IDF was distributing the food, but was around the distribution points to make sure that Hamas wasn't collecting the food instead of regular Gazans.
So, 30,000-foot view, what's left of Hamas?
Well, very little is left of Hamas. But you see, here's the thing. When you have hostages, because Hamas was really, really demolished, all its leadership has been taken out. And each time a new leader is sort of put in charge, he's taken out. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Hamas would be completely finished if not for the hostages. And that is because you see the West, Israel, and rightly so, cares about human life and is trying desperately not to conduct operations that endanger the hostages or end up killing them. And that's happened a couple of times. But also Hamas says, listen, you guys, every time we hear soldiers approaching a certain tunnel where the hostages are, we will just execute them. Okay, so when you ask me what's happening to Hamas, really, the war would have been won by now by Israel and over, if not for the hostages. And Israel does not want to just say, okay, we don't care about them, so we'll just bomb indiscriminately. No, and Israel also cares about the Palestinians in Gaza. It warns them, the IDF warns all the civilians in Gaza where to move. We say, we're about to strike or conduct an operation in this area. Please move out of the way. Go and give them maps where they can go.
Yeah, that's amazing. In the meantime, things are really heating up as it relates to Iran. It looks like some kind of a conflict is imminent. Would that spark Hamas to just go ahead and kill the rest of the hostages?
Well, it's hard to say. It could be just the opposite, that it would spark Hamas to capitulate or at least say, okay, we'll sign a deal and we'll release hostages in trenches for a pause in the fighting, as they did in the past. Last year, there were a few hostage release deals. What's happening with Iran is the most significant of all. Now, we don't know exactly what's happening. We know that President Trump has been trying to negotiate a deal with the Iranians, according to which not only does Iran have to destroy its own nuclear facilities, but may not enrich uranium at all. Now, Iran is not agreeing to this and is lying about what the purpose of its uranium enrichment is, claiming it's for peaceful purposes, but that's nonsense. Now, President Trump is running out of patience. And as we've heard in the last day or so, the United States has told embassy staffers around the Middle East to maybe to evacuate or to have their families evacuated, their wives and children, etc., right, to evacuate. There were warnings in Israel where not to go, certain parts of Israel where they should take care not to enter. So we know something's cooking. We also know that following a recent phone call earlier this week between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, after that phone call, Netanyahu convened a secret security cabinet meeting. Now, so we know that something's cooking, but we don't know exactly what. Does that mean Israel is about to attack? Does it mean that the Trump administration is going to participate in the attack or at least allow Israel to do it? Because a week ago or 2 weeks ago, President Trump asked Netanyahu, at this moment, please don't do anything because we're in the middle of negotiations. It wouldn't be appropriate, he said. I mean, Trump said this to a group of reporters at the Oval Office. He said, I told Netanyahu that it wouldn't be appropriate at this moment to attack Iran. Now, we don't know what he said in the most recent phone call, but we do know that after that, the United States is warning embassy staff to evacuate, etc. So it's clear something is happening.
Okay, a couple of things. Surely the Israeli intelligence knows a whole lot more than what we are led to know ourselves, obviously. They probably know where the hostages are. They probably know where those tunnels are. And they also know that negotiating with Iran is just like, you have better conversation with a fence post. It's not going to go anywhere. In the meantime, President Trump has tried negotiations. Do you think that was just to show the world that we tried negotiations knowing all along it wouldn't materialize?
Well, that's a good question because you see, President Trump has an administration that is made up of a mixture of serious isolationists who say that, the world's problems are not our problems. And these are the same type of people who were against bombing Japan after it bombed Pearl Harbor. Okay. So you have a group like that. And then you have other groups who say, no, America, to make America great again, it has to be the strongest superpower in the world. And that Iran is endangering America, not just Israel. So I think, and Trump, we know he negotiated great peace accords, the Abraham Accords, in his first term. And I think he really believed that he would be able to cause peace in the Middle East to bust out all over. And Iran was a sticking point. And we know that Saudi Arabia is waiting to see what happens with Iran and with Israel and Gaza, etc. But I think that President Trump may have been kidding himself. If this wasn't just a ploy, it was also to show the isolationists in the Republican Party that he is trying everything to get this resolved peacefully. Now, I personally know that there is no such thing as a good deal with Iran or with any radical Islamists. There is no such thing. So there is where I parted ways with President Trump, thinking that, he meant well, but I think he was mistaken in thinking there is such a thing, or that you could trust Iran at all.
One other quick question before I take a break. How, I don't know if the right word is dangerous, but I'll use that word. How dangerous was or is President Trump's friendship with Qatar?
Well, I've got to tell you, it's dangerous, but we knew that already, and it's not just President Trump. I'm sorry to say that Qatar, being really, all it is like a gas station or more like an ATM machine, funding universities across America, Europe, Israel, not universities, but Israel also had dealings with Qatar. My point is that, yes, it's dangerous because Qatar is a malign actor. Qatar is also Hamas. Qatar not only houses Hamas leaders, but it funds Hamas. So to even imagine that Qatar is some kind of peace broker is just ludicrous. But in fairness to President Trump, he's not the only one who was doing that. For years and years, we know now that Qatar is a key funder of all kinds of organizations in the United States. And as I said, universities.
Wow. All right, let me take a quick break. Check out Ruthie's website, jns.org, which is the Jewish News Syndicate, where she is a senior contributing editor there, and you can check out a lot of information. That's the go-to place, jns.org. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Always a joy and an honor to have with us Ruthie Blum. She's a former advisor there, actually in the office of the Prime Minister of Benjamin Netanyahu. She's now the senior contributing editor to the Jewish News Syndicate, and that is also the landing page, jns.org. Ruthie, just back to the misinformation that seems to be propagated in some of the Western press over here, the legacy media. I know that the new ambassador, Huckabee, came out and really blasted it. Do you have any idea what's going inside Netanyahu's office to counter that?
Well, listen, the internal politics, as you know, it happens in the United States as well, as I just pointed out. Mm-hmm. There are disputes within the U.S. administration as well. And in the Israeli government, which is a different system, it's a parliamentary system. So there has been a lot of rumblings recently about whether the government was going to fall because members of Netanyahu's coalition threatened to bolt. They have now retracted that. So in the meantime, the government is not falling. And Netanyahu, he's not only fighting a seven-front war, but he also has to deal with his internal politics in the Israeli parliament and in his coalition. But so far, he's managed that because he is quite a phenomenon, I must say, in that respect.
Yeah.
In a way similar to President Trump, who had all kinds of things, pressures on him of various kinds, and still manages to run the country.
It looks like some kind of action against Iran is imminent. On the table has to be the consideration of immediate response from Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen. Of course, we already know Hamas is upside down. And Syria. I would imagine Syria is going to be responding to this. Do you think that is part of the consideration of whatever the imminent attack would include?
Well, of course. But let's get one thing straight. Hezbollah, Israel really decimated Hezbollah. Syria, the new leader of Syria, who was, actually a wanted terrorist for many years and a member of both of ISIS and Al Qaeda, alternately, but he had put on a suit and tie and claims to have changed his stripes. Now, we don't know if that's true. But one thing we do know is that he's been sucking up to the United States. And so I'm not sure that he would be he would be joining in on Iran's side. Okay. After all, he toppled the Assad regime that was with Iran as an ally. Now, but you're right. Iran's proxies are all over. Now, the Houthis in Yemen have continued to fire missiles at Israel, and luckily most of them have been intercepted. But this is almost a daily occurrence, and Israel launched another strike on the port in Yemen a couple of days ago. So when you ask me, okay, what considerations are there? Of course, there are considerations about the hostages. There are considerations about what kind of retaliation Iran would launch. And the one thing we do know is that Israel severely, severely weakened Iran's air defenses. Back in October, Israel launched a strike. It took out Iran's air defenses, and nothing happened. Iran didn't even manage to down Israeli planes. So if there's ever a time to do it, also, the Iranian economy is in the tank. The Iranian people wish to topple the regime. All of this, with a weakened Iran, this would be the perfect time to take out its facilities, actually.
So, are the citizens of Israel behind attack on Iran?
Yes and no. The citizens of Israel who are conservative, yes. The progressives, no. Okay, just like in America, when you think of Israel, if you compare it to the United States, because there are many similarities, even though Israel is a Middle Eastern country, it's very Western and very American in many ways. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that Israel, especially since it's a Jewish state, and as you and I both know, Jews tend to be liberals. Even when there's a right-wing government in Israel, the academics, members of the media, all of that are on the left. So very often you're getting a distorted view of Israeli public opinion.
Right.
Public opinion is with taking out the enemy, defeating the enemy in order to achieve peace. The left never holds with that assessment.
Okay. That's parallel to the United States, no question about it. So let me ask you this. It would seem to me that Israel and the United States, whatever the attack is on Iran, has to be significant so that whatever retaliation would be planned couldn't be carried out. So it would seem to me, and I say this cautiously, that it would have to include a regime change.
Yes, but not from outside. The only regime change that will work or anything is that for the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. And making the regime weaker, especially by taking out its nukes, The same thing with Hamas, like taking the food distribution away from it, etc. Doing that helps the Iranian people to do it. That's not that America or Israel have to topple the regime. No, from outside, it's no good. It's got to come from within. But I will say something when you say about Iranian retaliation. Israel has been very good about, we have bomb shelters, we have early warning signals. Israelis are warned, go to your bomb shelter right now, children in school, etc. It's what happened when Iran fired hundreds of missiles into central Israel months ago, and nobody got hurt.
Yeah, they called the Iron Dome.
The Iron Dome, but not just the Iron Dome, because not even when the missiles aren't intercepted, if you are in your bomb shelters, then you're not going to get hurt.
Yeah. Back to Syria just for a moment. If some kind of scrimmage occurs with Iran, would that give Turkey a little bit of a heads up to go in there and to take Syria?
You know, that's a major concern. And there are arguments about this, even among conservative analysts in the United States, about whether it's good to have Turkey in there taking control or bad. I believe it's bad. And yes, Turkey is a very big, very large concern, because you see, Erdogan is one of those leaders who wants hegemony in the Middle East. And he is a radical Islamist as well.
Yeah, because I guess the mystery from us is why have we tolerated Turkey to be a member of NATO?
I have to tell you, it puzzles me. And it's a shame, because Turkey, in the pre-Erdogan days, Turkey was a whole different kettle of fish. And, so I don't know what's going to happen with Turkey. There are so many moving parts here. But one thing we do know is that Iran is the head of a snake that has to be taken out. And I mean the regime, not the people.
Right.
And that President Trump has made clear, and so has Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is not a beef with Iranians. It's a beef with that regime, and it's being on the verge of having nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia joining the accord, is that significant now, or does it matter when it happens?
Well, I don't think it can happen until Iran is defeated. I mean, Saudi Arabia is not an ally of Iran, on the contrary. But it's waiting to see who the strong horse is. That's the thing with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was on the verge of maybe joining the Abraham Accords. How do we know that? Because Saudi Arabia gave tacit approval to the Gulf countries to sign those accords. They would not have done so without Saudi approval. However, it was really waiting to see, especially after October 7th, who's winning this war, because, it will not tie itself to the weak horse. And so, with all the chummy we saw between the Saudi crown prince and President Trump, that's all well and good. But I'm sure he's waiting to see what is happening, who's going to emerge victorious in order to decide whether to sign accords brokered by Trump.
Yeah. Ruthie, thank you for your time. Here you are at stateside, hopefully getting a little R&R, and you give us a few moments here. Let me say how much I appreciate that. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out the website, jns.org, which is the Jewish News Syndicate. That is the place where it happens. And you could also maybe pick up her television show there on JNS TV, Israel Undiplomatic. Thank you, Ruthie. God bless you, my friend.
God bless you, Perry.